health is not absence of illness. Health may be described as your capacity to be connected to people. That's also being healthy, right? It's very important. I think we are too obsessed by staying healthy, almost like trying to do everything right. And I think we force our bodies and we stress our bodies enormously. We constantly follow some sort of protocols. We constantly hearing what we should be exercise, what we should be doing, but we really forget about listening to ourselves. We rarely find our authentic voice. We only follow ideas of others, but we do not sense what actually is happening in our physiology.
Welcome to Pain Points. Today I'm excited to be speaking with Jozef Frucek, a dear mentor of mine and a pioneer in the world of movement. He uses embodied cognition to combine ideas from Tai Chi, wrestling, and physical theater to create a wholly unique approach to movement that he calls the fighting monkey practice. He is a teacher of mine and now collaborator. We recently finished a paper called Beyond Biomechanics, an inactive inference approach to health and movement. I'm really excited about this interview today because Jozef is, as you will hear, an incredible storyteller, but more importantly, through his work, is articulating one of the most inspiring visions of health, which of course includes my own work on pain. We begin by discussing his background, learning Tai Chi for 20 years in an experimental Slovakian movement community, before explicitly discussing our paper. Hope you enjoy. I'd love to hear the story of how you met Ming Wang, the Tai Chi teacher.
I finished my basketball career. I realized that I will probably not wanting to continue the professional sports, so I was also accepted at that time to University of Music and Drama Arts, and I believe I always wanted to be more actor than an athlete. It just happened that I touched certain sports and it went very well for me. But when it came to a decision which university I will be applying to, if it's going to be the sport education or art, I was absolutely certain it must be art. And so I was accepted. I was lucky enough to be accepted. And something, I would say, I was always very curious, and sport is abandoning a body a little bit, I feel. It requires the maximum from your body, and yet the body is being left on the background. And I didn't feel so well. I didn't feel so well in my knees and my lower back, and I felt like I abused a little bit myself. But had enough of consciousness.
How old were you at this time? How old were you?
That was, I decided that I'm going to stop. I was maybe 17 and a half, so close to 18. And I felt my body was abused. Still healthy, but I felt my knees are not okay so much and my lower back. And I was not walking nice. I saw myself and I felt, oh, I'm a little bit bent forward. And after 1 year of study of acting, I was interested again in physicality. I was interested in not only speaking like in classical drama theater, but I wanted to move. So the imprint or the history of my growing, where I was physically very active, has its kind of echoing effect on me. So it wasn't enough just to sit on the chair and read the script and then somehow say it on the stage while sitting or standing. So I first went to a stunt school, and my colleagues in the school were laughing at me. But I loved it anyway, because I said, I will be a stunt.
Stunt school?
Stunt, like a
As in, oh,
sorry,
stuntman.
yeah, my English.
Yeah.
So I was studying stunt, then I started to box a little bit, and then I somehow found my way towards movers and dancers, a really beautiful community in Slovakia at that time, really powerful people. They started some sort of revolution of what's possible in this area, in the performing arts. And they were very kind and invited me to be part of the development that they were taking. And they said, Jozef, you might be also interested in Tai Chi. And I met Laco Horniak. And he was a doctor of biology and doctor of psychology. And he was probably my longest teacher. in Tai Chi. So he's this invisible master that no one knows about and no one will maybe mention, but he was very important for me. He introduced me to, I believe, not only Tai Chi, but also he introduced me to philosophy and to biology a little bit. And he was a scientist himself, so it was a quite nice combination. So it doesn't get lost in some kind of empty spirituality. Then through
Mm.
practicing with him, I met Tomasz Nowakowski, who was another Tai Chi master. He had one of the biggest school in Europe. I was following him for a while and he was learning from Master Ming Wong. And Master Ming Wong was
Okay.
very kind man because he didn't want to teach me. So always when I said to him, please teach me Chinese medicine, he would say, no, it's too complicated. But I spent maybe over 20 years with him or next to him. And first, it was to learn traditional forms, for which he gave me permission after 12 years, so I could be teaching them. I never did. I don't believe it's my culture, and I don't believe I understand them as much as he does. So it was very beautiful, and I really appreciate he felt that I'm on some kind of entrance door to be able to share it with other people and lead some classes. And after that period, yes.
Joseph, I'm super curious about Ming Wang, but I'd love to hear a little more about this community of movers in
Oh,
Slovakia.
okay. So we go a few
How
steps
did
backwards. Okay, perfect.
a few step back?
So there were few figures. They were like Milan Kozánek, Kova, Anka Sedlačková, Mira Kovářová, and these were the people that were moving towards free forms, let's say contact improvisation, contemporary dance, and that was very new. We were just after the socialistic blog has it broke out, so we were exposed to information that otherwise would not be available. And I was stunned by, and also not only stunned, but I was also in awe that I can be moving without any purpose, meaning that sport is to achieve something and something particular, but they are exploring a novelty without need for the novelty to be there. So you, for example, when you work in improvisation, it's like you try to learn how to tickle yourself. So of course, your predictive
Hmm.
model isn't impossible to tickle yourself, but somehow when you're moving, can you surprise yourself? And I guess,
Can you tickle yourself,
yeah,
Joseph?
I would say that
I feel like
I can tickle myself when I move. So in other words, I can get a dopamine rush just by exploring what my body can do without
Mhm.
focusing on what my body have achieved in an external world, if that makes sense. So that was beginning
Yeah.
journey where I understood that I can stand still and be excited. And then I said, wow,
Mhm.
I always thought I would get that excitement only from the bigger roller coaster. So when you do sports, when you sprint faster, when you lift heavier weights, or when you strike harder, or when you are in competition, you get this rush, you get this incredible sense of being. But I realized that,
What was it that united? So you mentioned contact improv. So some of Steve Paxton's
yes,
ideas were what united this group of movers? How did it start?
they were community, so everyone was doing something slightly different, right? But as a community, they really completed each other. And I think what was in common between them was this enormous amount of curiosity and exploration that was missing in general. And I think it was a really powerful generation because they grew up really amazing dancers, or dancers in Slovakia in that generation and the generation after were very powerful movers that kind of traveled the world and people recognized them, and they are still recognizing them until now. It's not that I've been part of the recognition, but I was next to them, so I really loved to be with them because this was like my second education while I was doing my acting education, and then later my doctorate on voice and movement. I was in parallel studying with them, so it's I've almost done two universities.
Wonderful. You were saying then about so Latzia, your mentor, was part of this community, and then he introduced you to the person who was the student of Ming Wang.
Yeah, so Laco Horniak, he was the instructor of Tai Chi, through whom I learned about his master Tomasz Nowakowski in Poland, and then he was learning. One of his masters was Master Ming Wong, and I visited him and kept on visiting him for over 20 years. And I guess at first I was interested in forms, but later on I was interested in principles that give rise to those forms. So most of the discussion was, can fixed form deliver can fixed form deliver the answers to the uncertainties we try to resolve? If we talk about physiology, we might have a problem with the stomach or our kidneys, or we might have inflammation in our knees. Can we always resolve them with some kind of fixed forms that we have once learned and then we just repeating them? And so I slowly, longer I was with the Master Ming Wong, more I was trying to move towards no forms than forms, which does not mean that the forms are not important. They are definitely an heritage of what we've been working on and how we were trying to solve the troubles. So we're recognizing the past knowledge. But like in genes, you use this past information and then maybe shuffle it in a certain way or create some kind of mutations in order for the form to continue to develop, because we know that the evolution stops when things they start to be replicated with 100% accuracy, or they start to code for gibberish.
One thing you mentioned is something I hear you emphasize is that Ming Wang, after studying for a while, there's this permission
Yeah.
that you can go and give it. What do you? What's the importance of permission from a teacher?
I guess they recognize your engagement, or they maybe feel that you are serious in a playful way. I mean, not serious in your face, or maybe not too dogmatic, but maybe they just trust you that you will work honestly and modestly and humbly with the forms on your future journey. So I guess that would be my interpretation, or I would like to believe that he believed that I would have that humble capacity. So maybe it is more my projections on why he would give me permission.
Mm. And you, having spent now 40 plus years of very serious engagement with movement, have a big community of students too. But it feels like you have a different attitude towards permission and
Yeah,
transmission.
I do not want to log anyone. If you come for one day and you feel there is something that you can use, then use it. And if you're around for a long period of time, then that's also fine. So once I said it's like a relation to a stray dogs. I was once in a park in Athens, and it was a huge park and there were a lot of stray dogs. And sometimes they kind of followed me and took a little path with me. Sometimes they stay with me when I was practicing and were observing me as if they would be my students. And sometimes some of the dogs were on the same side like me, as if they would be also teaching. And sometimes they would not appear for weeks, and sometimes only some of them would appear, and sometimes all of them would appear. And I found, wow, this is very interesting kind of relation that we have, that we love each other. For some reason, we really enjoyed each other's presence, but we did not create some kind of stable contract that unless you come every time, then I will not be teaching you. Or if you leave once, then you cannot return back, which I experienced quite a lot when I was practicing. If you would be introducing, in some schools, when you would be introducing and maybe a different style or ideas of different teachers, people would be not so happy about it because everyone is looking for some sort of purity. And I don't think evolution was ever working with some sort of purity or kind of attitude of being overly loyal to one system or one form or one model, right? Which was, I think, the best expressed by Michael Levin when he says, "Don't overtrain your priors." It might be dangerous. It might be detrimental.
And also when he says that evolution doesn't create solutions, it creates problem solving
Yeah,
agent,
I really love that.
right?
For sometimes, this was in one of the first pages in my notebook. I say, yes, we are able to solve the troubles. So there is this kind of, I felt in that sentence some sort of a hope for agency, right? So we can train ourselves to be able to solve the troubles ourselves. Doesn't mean alone, but we are, if we cannot solve something alone, then maybe we can reach out to other people and solve things collectively. that doesn't matter, but we have the capacity to spot the trouble, hopefully early enough, and then organize ourselves or organize ourselves with the others, find the resources to resolve that particular uncertainty. And I felt really strongly aligned with that, with what he was saying.
So at the same time as you were doing Tai Chi and movement, you were studying the theater very seriously. What, if anything, did Tai Chi teach you about the theater?
The truth is that Tai Chi was, and people mention it, and you're mentioning it as well. I spent many years doing Tai Chi, but I also spent many years doing boxing, and I spent many years doing freestyle wrestling, and I spent many years doing table tennis and basketball. So there were more sports that I attended to and engaged for a longer period of time. Tai Chi in particular, the Tai Chi taught me something about the forms. The forms can become very beautiful, and so they can become spectacular. But I also understood as an artist, I'm not interested in perfected forms. I never been. I always like to see myself as someone who is taking the raw material and works on it until the moment the idea is being clear, but I do not care about polishing it, or I do not crave, yeah, like I do not crave to have all the details under control in my performances. So our performances have a lot of empty spaces. There's a lot of risk being involved. We have a kind of clear structure. It's not like we can do anything we want, but every element, every position, compositional elements, or physical objects, or our interpretation has a great amount of space within which we can take what we feel or what we feel inspired by in that particular day.
What did table tennis teach you about your body?
Table tennis was fantastic. The hand-eye coordination has probably transferred almost into anything. And this very nimble, very alert whole body coordination. So in table tennis, it is very unlikely you're going to isolate. Or there is no permission for isolation because you will not be able to go from forehand to backhand or to respond to a sudden change of the tennis ball, table tennis ball trajectory. And it also, table tennis not on its own, but table tennis was a very beautiful place where I built up my relation with my father. Besides, I always, people know the story about him being a hunter and that we've been spending a lot of time in mountains and discovering herbs and mushrooms and wild animals. And those are the stories that I share mostly because they are more attractive. But my beginning of my childhood, maybe I was, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, was me going with him to play table tennis. So that was this opposite side to this free exploration, stepping into a table tennis where I needed to perform well. And I must say, I didn't cope very well with that pressure.
Why table tennis?
These things are simple. If your father at that moment of his life likes table tennis, then it is more likely his little boy will go with him to a training and also train table tennis. He could not take me to shooting, right? So he was working in armed forces all his life. So these activities were not available to me when I was a young boy. But table tennis was. He felt this would be a good startup for my life. I felt a little bit ashamed for it when I was in a basic school because everyone was playing these popular sports like hockey, like basketball, volleyball, judo, and I was just this tall, tiny boy, slim boy. I'm still slim, but slim and not strong, but maybe well coordinated, but that no one cares about it. If I had to climb the rope, I was horrible. So my physical performance wasn't there like in comparison to the boys that were doing like light athletics or football. So I felt like I suffered a little bit for that. And I guess that's why also I escaped that sport in certain moment.
Yeah, it's funny that the table tennis in particular, because I would imagine that a hunter gathering in the mountains, if anything, it would be a rougher sport. I don't know, football or basketball or something. Table tennis to me is very, in my context, it's very
Yeah,
nerdy,
yeah.
academically coded. A lot of Asian young Asians will be.
I was always
Yeah.
inclined to Asian culture, so probably that's why this
Mm.
sport found me.
What was the first instance you remember feeling resonance with an Asian culture?
It must have been as early as I discovered the literature around Chan Buddhism, then later Zen Buddhism, and Taoism very strongly. Taoism, Confucianism was present in my life maybe from 17 years old. And I think till this moment, I dwell in Asian culture. I really appreciate what this part of the world contributes to the humanity.
At some point, you were pretty involved and influenced by Japanese Zen, but you also have more recently become involved with Korean Zen.
I think
You can say something
I
about
think I went
about
as the I went like a historical development. So I was interested in how Taoism and Buddhism kind of common ground. And then I was interested in Chan and then Korean Zen Buddhism and then Japanese Zen Buddhism. So I felt like I studied or read all of those, maybe pathways or streams of development.
over what period, and did the study also involve you going to the
No,
temples?
no temples. I never thought I would need one. I always thought I am the right temple. My body is my best temple. And it's not that far. It's very close to me. I always carry it with myself. Wherever there was a spot, I could just attend to myself. And that would have been my internal humble telescope where I could discover the world within me. Over which period? I think from the 17 years old until yesterday evening when I was studying some of the stories of Lin Chi.
Mm.
It's still present. And what I found so interesting. I'm still somewhere in depth of my soul. I feel like I'm an actor. So I love stories and I know their power. And it's just so incredible that stories can be so engaging, can be sometimes much more engaging than, let's say, a research paper. I think what's so great about these stories from, let's say, a Chinese medicine, let's say Huan's story, or some other Zen stories, like Kuan stories, is that there is a great, beautiful, compressed truth about life there. I don't think it's accessible to everyone because you need to have some sort of experience in order to appreciate the depth. Because some people, when they read it, they say, there is nothing really. It's just so, it doesn't, it's not concrete enough. But I believe they are incredible compression of life, wisdom in life. But the science story requires so much more encoding. And not only that you encode and you understand, but then also how are you going to share what you have learned in that paper and apply it to your practical life? That's what I'm mostly interested in. To collect the knowledge and to collect the citations, it's good for another academical paper. But I like to tell a story of what I understood from Carl Friston or what I understood from Andy Clark or what I understood from Marlo Ponti and find stories that could hopefully transmit some of their teachings and some of their fantastic ideas.
There's I very interested in also in the older Chinese philosophy, and you mentioned Confucius and Taoism in one breath, but I feel there's a very strong tension where the Taoists
Between
were
them.
the shamans were very open and yeah, formless, and the Confucians had all these assumptions about form and the father of the household, these
Yeah,
kinds of ideas.
yeah.
And how have you encountered both?
I was much more inclined to, well, yeah, go in an interesting direction. I was always interested in if everything is right, then we don't have to impose order. And from my teaching that I don't like to order the body or order the breathing and tell you how to order it. I was so much more interested in emergence. I was so much more interested in kind of self-organization that you give to body or to relations a space to self-organize. So that would be, I'm inclining more towards that side rather than following some sort of imposed social hierarchy and a certain code in how we should be behaving in certain situations. And I'm an artist, so I'm meeting people that are in some way really ruleless or disordered or are weird, or they do not comply easily with the societies and society's expectations. And I feel very comfortable in that society, in that circuit of people that are just daring. They are just dangerous. Dangerous in a nice way, right? So they can expand the boundary of how we think about certain ideas, or how do we touch objects, how do we manipulate, and how do we sculpt, what do we dress, how do we move in these costumes that we wear, how do we write a text about something, how do we take away or break down the grammar, speak in some kind of weird way. This is all superbly interesting to me.
What about what brings people together, though? It seems to me that it's wonderful to be an anarchist and to deconstruct things, but what about the myths and the archetypes that actually unite people?
Like,
Like the stories of what a country is, for example, stories of religion and continued social order.
I guess we need it, otherwise we would be falling into a chaos. But I never felt for a flag. I'm sorry. I feel like I know where it came from. I love the landscape of Slovakia. I love the smell of my landscape. I know the shape of that landscape. I know there are particular type of people in that mountain landscape, in those forests. I understand that we have something in common there, but I never felt for borders that we have created. I know they are necessary, but they are not playing very important role in my life. I live with all the consequences of being part of a certain culture or certain state with certain laws. I understand that I am bound to one country, but I do not dwell, I do not think about that so much. I do not beat myself in the chest because I am Slovak, or because I have certain
Yeah.
correlation to certain politics or a certain culture.
Joseph, can I ask you what the greatest pain is that you have learned from?
What was the greatest? There were many pains. I experienced quite a lot of pain in my life, but they were all very beautiful encounters. I remember already when I was a small kid, and probably this is a story of any kid. When I realized the fact that I am not immortal, that I will die one day, I was very touched by it. So when the winter came, I would feel not depressed, but really insecure about life. And so I was very sensitive to light. The long nights in winter were very difficult for me. But I also learned slowly how to cope with it. I remember that I was climbing on one tree because my refuge was somewhere in the, I don't know how you said in English, was in the crown of the tree. So I climbed quite high in the trees and I was sitting there on a branch. And when I was liberated from the gravity, so to say, my feet were not touching the ground, I felt that I am lighter. And that was one of my coping mechanisms and stories that I would start to tell to myself, how to overcome the trouble of feeling sad or feeling burdened by winter and darkness. And I don't know, I remember it blurry, but I know it was not easy time. I could not like sleep very easily. I was worried that I would fall asleep as the last one. That kind of loneliness was, oh yeah, it was very painful. I remember it. But then I don't know. I always had that power to tell change the story. If you talk about Carl Friston, I could very fluently, always very fluently adjust my storytelling, my model, or adjust my action without feeling too much pain. I just needed to figure out what kind of other stories I could tell to myself. So I find the beauty also in the time of darkness. And there were many other, of course, later on in my life, but look, in comparison to many other people around the globe, I live very privileged life, and my pains are irrelevant, maybe.
I'm interested in the stories. So
Yeah, so yeah,
I'm
so you see this, so this existential pain, so to say, was always present. So I quite early touched the literature of existentialist Sartre or Albert Camus came very early, or I encountered Nietzsche very early. And because I needed to resolve it and I didn't want to talk to anyone. But I slowly found a way. And I guess I found a way also through theater. I started to do theater very early. I don't know, maybe I was 10, maybe even a bit earlier, maybe 10, 11, when I found for myself a school, folk school of arts. And then when I started to explore as a small kid theater, I realized, wow, life is a simulation. I can really do almost whatever I want. I am in control of my perception. And what do I perceive and what kind of story I gonna tell? So this capacity of creating agency, understanding that I can create world within the world, or that there is not just an environment, but a world that I'm tending to, and that I can make that world predictable. Or I can not only be forced to adapt, but I can also adapt the environment was very early idea for me. So this didn't come only when I was started to study the relevant literature, Immanuel Kant and Heidegger and Husserl and all this lineage that kind of were related also later on to an activism. But I understood the fact that we are living in some sort of simulation, because if I'm able to retell the story in a different way, I change the whole atmosphere of the situation I'm in or of the life that I'm living. And yeah,
So, how do you understand this existential pain, and what is the story around that
I
now?
think it's the story is very simple. The story is all stories of all people is probably I have something and I'm afraid of losing it. And this comes in many different colors and shapes. So you can say, I'm alive and I will die. And you have to cope with it in some way. But not everyone can feel it. But I felt it was almost tangible. It's something that I could smell and touch, and it existed in kind of four-dimensional space for me, death, like the form of disappearance. I would be dwelling or thinking about the universe and thinking about the fact that I have limited time on the earth quite early in my life. So it is this question of I have and I'm afraid of losing it. And then this translates into I'm healthy and maybe I will get sick, or I had that and I do not have it right now. And so it appears in our lives. And if we do not understand this kind of clinging and thinking and this holding into something, then we will be constantly creating suffering for ourselves. And then, of course, as a natural consequence, we will be also making others suffer because it is not clear to us, because we cannot stay in our own axis and dance with life. We are holding ourselves in life, and when we are holding ourselves, we stop to sense ourselves, and then we stop also to sense other people. Because as we are,
So
when
the
you are in tension, then your body consumes so much energy. There is not much of time and like a sensitivity in observation of others. You are becoming a very heavy
Mhm.
creature in the world.
So the question, the existential pain is we're afraid of losing the core thing, which is our life. And the answer is to dance as we are with what is around
I would
us.
say so. It sounds so cliche, man, but if we like make it really practical, people do a lot of interesting and beautiful therapies, maybe theater therapy, or you might get a massage or manual therapy, or you might get whatever. But we forgot how to dance and sing and how to engage with love and caring to the world that we are part of. We cannot dance. And so it is complicated to dance with other people. And maybe people say, oh my God, he talks about dancing. He's ridiculous. But even when you wrestle, if you do not dance, you're doomed. You're going to be muscled around. You need to be able to reconfigure yourself depending on who is in front of you and how they are talking to you. And that's not possible through holding, through achieving, through maintaining. This is more like I am dancing and I'm willing to also change through the dialogue.
I met someone the other day, Joseph, and I asked him, when was the last time that you danced? He said, I don't dance. I don't, never danced. I like to write and I like to think.
Beautiful.
What do you say to people
Oh,
like,
keep on writing and thinking. If this is good enough and you're happy, not everyone has to do it. For me, having embodied
Mhm,
experience is very important. I don't think I can understand you unless I move with you. I cannot, okay, I'm
mhm,
studying Max, and if Max has a pain in his lower back, I can be sitting, or I can give you instructions, or I can make you lay and work on you, but I do not really understand who you are unless I move with you, unless I play with you, unless I engage in some sort of dialogue. And I repeat myself, but dialogue is dialogos, means meaning of in between from Greek, right? Dia as in between, logos as
mhm.
meaning. So we can find a meaning of life or relation only when we engage in mutual communication, mutual exchange. And that is not possible if I'm static. I need to be able and free to move with you. And moving with you is moving in your stories or moving with you physically. So I need an embodied experience. If I'm thinking of Carl
Mm.
Friston, I'm thinking every single day when I'm creating artwork, I see, wow, how many beautiful overlaps there are. And therefore, I know that to a great degree, this story that he's telling is absolutely right. Also, when you read like papers, like how do we combine in a kind of alchemical way the pragmatic and epistemic action? Like when you are exploring and when you are exploiting, and how you're opening a parallel pathways to in order to be able to build up a new world, right? Or how long do you hold on the model until you realize that it is not the right model? So you're not overly sensitive to a noise too early and maybe changing something that might have value in 1 month's exploration, right? Because in art, this is important. Let's say you create a beautiful art and everyone hates it, but maybe it's just the society is not ready to see this new type of writing or new type of talking or a new type of performance dramaturgy. And so you need to be careful that if you are minimizing the errors too early, then you also might create very mediocre art. And many other parallels. And so I really like those overlaps. Like when I read the research paper, whatever that research paper is, if it catches my attention, I'm looking, can I understand it to a degree that I can see the application in my creative work, in my life?
So, Joseph, do you want to dance? Do you want to play a
Yeah, let's
game?
go.
Okay. It's called the
Yeah,
question game. It's
yeah.
pretty simple. For about 5 minutes, I ask a question, you ask a question. It's
What is
movement.
hiding behind your hat?
Why do symbols have so much grip on us?
Why do we hold up so much on our ideas?
How is error minimization wrong?
Why the camera cannot be sharpened?
Why is it so powerful when we make eye contact?
And how beautiful is it when we are listening to each other?
What is so difficult about listening for many?
Why we let the words flow away without noticing them?
How is it that we think that we are the ones who are noticing?
Again,
How do we think? Why do we think we are the ones that notice?
why do we even think?
How do we learn to speak?
How do we learn to be quiet?
What is the difference between learning and unlearning?
What's the difference between walking and sitting?
What is it to destroy a chair?
And what is it to create life?
How does life create life?
Why reproduction is so ineffective?
How does it feel to know that you were an embryo in your mother, in her grandmother?
How do you feel about Big Bang and cold universe?
Why take the perspective of a cold universe?
Why to think about any of it?
What science can be done without thinking?
How much we can do without poetry?
Is poetry more like sculpting or like dancing?
Is it floating like a water or staying like a rock?
Is it sour like a lemon or sweet like honey?
Why sleeping would be more important than being awake?
Why don't we remember our dreams nowadays?
Why dreams are so important for our future?
What if babies are the greatest teachers.
What if old people would be with us until they die?
How much are we constrained by the ideas of older people who think they know?
How much we are constrained by our bodies?
What is it what are the constraints that we can let go of, and what are the ones that stay?
How the bees find their way home?
What have we learned from ants?
Why you cannot cut the cloud in half?
What is truth?
Where is the sun and where is the moon when we sleep?
Where is left and right when you close your eyes and turn upside down?
If I ask you, where do you see me? Is it outside of you or inside of you?
What if where is just an idea?
What if weather is cold?
What if our skin is sweating all the time?
What if your mother calls you and said that she didn't cook for you?
What if I learned from that no one would cook for me?
What the hammer can do, but pen can't.
How to understand harmony and violence?
How to understand your voice and authenticity.
How can we understand each other through movement more?
How we learn to not care at all.
What questions matter?
And why to find an answer.
How do I open my heart?
And why cookie tastes so sweet. Beautiful.
Do you have a question for me, Jozef?
How is it that you find yourself in a field of science and not field of art?
It's because I am a philosopher, and I can dance with both because ideas are deep and present in both. And there's a mode of thinking and moving in science that is rigorous and structured in thought that feels very familiar to me. But I also love to play, and I love to play with ideas. And for me, all the art that I create is about playing with ideas.
Oh, wonderful. I told you
Yeah.
already that I am very weak in math, so my path wasn't there. My teacher always thought that I'm really stupid. And I don't blame the teacher for saying that because I was really not that good in math. I was more paying attention to basketball at that time.
You know what Mike Levin says about the tests and assessments,
No, I
right?
don't know. Please tell me.
That every test is as much a measure of the test giver as the test taker.
Beautiful. So the responsibility is somewhere between us.
Yes, and so if we give a machine an IQ test, it might well be that we're just measuring our own IQ.
And yet, the truth is that I'm weak at math.
Okay, I think it'd be nice to talk a little bit about the paper that is now finished and I uploaded.
I must say, I appreciate that you found a theme and you actually completed it and it's done and it's out there. This is something that I can't do so easily. I like to let things open and I do not know how to close them.
I can give a rundown of some of the ideas, and you can challenge me or change how I'm explaining them. See if there's differences or interesting tensions to explore for this. Does that sound good to you? So the paper is supposed to be an exposition of the underlying thoughts of this movement of inactivism, inference, and how they can come together with some of Mike Levin's ideas to help us rethink health and movement. And that's naturally what Fighting Monkey has been. The key ideas that we highlight from each of these traditions are this nested agency across scales. So that there's maybe four key ideas. One is we are nested agents. The second is that we are extended and embedded. The third is that we're dynamically self-creating. And the fourth is we use action to minimize surprise, action and perception. Yeah, I want to keep this not super just like academic or ideas oriented. So how could we embody and really make visceral this idea of nested agency across scales, for example? How does that show up for you, that we have these parts that all have their own agency?
Well, maybe a very simple example, when you were mentioning breathing, we like to teach people how to breathe, right? We have a certain breathing exercises and maybe certain techniques, and we used to correct maybe sometimes people. I'm not saying everyone, but let's say it is happening quite often. It may be happening in some kind of more spiritual practices. It can be happening in meditation. It can be happening in voice training or vocal trainings, etc. And I always thought that it is so much more interesting if the breathing does its own thing, as if it would be, as if it would have its own intelligence. And I believe that letting things be and just giving them the possibility to communicate across those scales are giving us a possibility for the system to self-organize much better way than we would be directing it and controlling it.
And it's true too, right? It's because it's a silly illusion to think you can control your breath, because when you fall asleep, do you choose to keep breathing?
And also come to a small
I don't
kid,
think so.
listen how do they breathe,
Mhm.
and just listen to them for 1 minute, and you will realize that they are breathing, that the breath changes so much from short to long, longer breathing in, shorter breathing out, or opposite. So really the body is so intelligent and is changing constantly how the breathing respond to so many different physiological states. And when we were working in a voice in university, when we started to work, if someone had a problem with breathing, it would be more shallow or blocked, or it would be more clavicular or not deep enough, or they would not know how to phrase longer speech sequences. So they would be out of their breath. Then if you would be focusing on the breathing, you would really disrupt the person even more. They would become even more self-conscious about themselves. But if you change the intention in which you allow coordination of their idea, if their idea is of course clear. When idea is not very clear, or if they are not aligned with what they want to do, there suddenly starts to be some kind of disharmonies, they appear. Like your voice is doing something else than your gestures, your posture, your vision, your voice. So if you understand well the direction you want to take, it doesn't have to be clear to you like what is the goal, but direction you want to take, then if you help to clarify that to your student or to the partner that you're working with, that then somehow the diaphragm, posture, gesture, the entire tone will change, and you will be more likely producing the sound or the tone or the voice that you desired, and maybe would be more aligned with the information you want to share. We many times, also with my teacher, we use many different tools, many different situations in which you spontaneously find that, wow, I have this aha moment when, yes, I was participating in regulating my behavior and maybe minimizing some sort of error, but I was not in control or not in full control. I was only participating by giving myself an opportunity to find a better energy funnel, find a better pathway through which this certain task would be accomplished.
Okay, what about the extended and embedded part? How do you emphasize and clarify? It's
Oh
an
yeah,
active
extended
thing.
is just so simple. Not everyone agrees, right? But Andy Clark is speaking about this with such a great clarity. But extended, how I could say, I take a tool and my opportunities in the world just start to increase. Or I ask you, Max, a good question and you give me a good answer and you help me to resolve a certain problem. I extended myself into your brain, into your neural network. And so I'm feeling that I'm living in some sort of very alive net of interconnections that allow me to create a really large solution space, because I love to work with people, because I love to work with materials, because I have really strong sense of working with the tools, and I know how environment resisting sometimes ideas. I pass through that process so many times. I feel, yes, I am extended, even not only through tools but also through ideas into the world. So there are probably many different layers that we could be talking about, but yes, I am not finished by the layer of my skin. That extendedness of my mind is through the other people, through the tools, through the world that I'm walking on, means my tactile sense, what I touch in the world is giving me access to information that I need to acquire. And then embedded, of course, I cannot exist without the environment in which I exist. But I am creating a world. So this is, of course, Francesco Varela, how beautifully he wrote about it. He said, yes, we are not part of the environment, but the world that we create. So we do not attend to everything in the world, but only to a particular world. So we are embedded, and that particular informational exchange is forming us, is sculpting us, and we are sculpting the world in return.
So someone might say, okay, but I could take someone and I put them in a vacuum, put them in a spacesuit, go into
Yeah.
outer space. And are you removing them from the environment? Or like they're still them,
For
right?
how long though?
Uh, and also what I would say is they need a spacesuit, which was made by human
Yes, and you need
culture,
to
and they have
provide
their
with
ideas
basically
and
inside of that
everything.
spacesuit, you have probably the similar environment in which it's your ecological niche. There is certain temperature that you can cope with, certain amount of oxygen. You will probably need to have some kind of supply of nutritions. So it is still extended environment that you've been used to live on Earth. Yeah.
So what's the role of joy and love? Like, how does that relate to error and surprise
So when we
realization?
say if I possess a good model of the world, then that model brings more opportunities for me in my life. And that means that I can well exploit what I know, but I have also enough of energy resources to explore the world and find novel inspirations to keep on going and inform myself. So I do not live only from what I learned in past, which can be very sufficient. So my prior knowledge can very well deal with the world that I'm attending to. But I like to bring catastrophes in my life. But I am initiating those catastrophes, certain crises that allow me to or force me to move in a different way or think in a different way, or I am forced to meet and talk to other people. And so this is this model that allows me to bring more opportunities. It allows me to solve the troubles and also solving them with some sort of grace. I'm not solving troubles crying every day. I'm solving them and I'm feeling like, wow, I'm learning something. It's so beautiful that I'm learning that yeah, go ahead.
So So you're saying that joy helps you solve problems better, and that's how it helps minimize
Yeah,
surprise?
I like to stay joyful even in critical situation. Meaning joy could be I am interested in how am I going to resolve this sort of trouble or challenge I am in. I don't necessarily say to myself in a negative way. My partner in life, she always say, Joseph, everything is for good. Everything is a good opportunity for learning. Oh, we are learning creatures. We are creatures that are able to resolve the problems. But if you come to with an attitude of I am interested in learning through this crisis, you have a different attitude towards life. And there is some sort of, I would say, almost a joy if there is a trouble. We are creating our new show. I showed you just a few minutes before our new set. Max, it is to create world out of nothing can be very painful experience. And yet it is joyful that you come back to a theater, into your simulation room, and you are attending to that empty space or to those materials that you choose to work with, even if those materials or those ideas are giving you enormous amount of resistance, that you can persist and ask those questions over and over again until suddenly this moment of compression, this aha moment happens when you are able to find connections or a world that was always there. Those worlds are there, they exist, but we do not know how to find a pathway towards them.
Okay. So, yeah, I think it's less for me these questions about the underpinnings and the philosophy of the active inference and activism, at least for the purposes of our paper, it's less interesting or less important because I think there are legitimate open questions about the assumptions here and whether it's helpful. But the thing that I love about how you approach it is that it's so much about does this idea spark new things to do and can we use this language in our own way? We don't have to ask, is this true fundamentally? Absolutely. But we can say, how does this let us
Max,
see
you're
this?
very right.
Right.
Look, we can be looking at those theories and criticize them. Or we can say that they contribute to my well-being. Because the way Carl Friston formulated this story, and I'm not talking only about the mathematical way he expressed them, which is also superbly elegant, but the way he told the story is very useful to my everyday life. And so if it is absolute truth, I do not care. But through that story and many other stories, I am able to resolve a certain uncertainties with more elegance and with more joy and with more pleasure. So yes, he's very valuable to me.
Mm.
And if I would be in computational neuroscience, or if I would be an expert in evolution, maybe I could find some troubles in that story. But I am not looking for the troubles. I try to see what's good in them. And I know, and I give them the space
Mhm.
for evolution. I know that these ideas of
Mhm.
Carl Friston or Andy Clark or Michael Levin, they will be evolving. I don't think they themselves think this is a final step in understanding what motivated living creatures are doing. But I think they are trying to contribute to better understanding. And so I understand it as creative process. I do not believe that my art in premiere, when I present you a performing arts performance, that I have arrived to a final point. But this is the moment when I need to share with the public where I'm currently at. And you can criticize me, but I've done the job, and you've been only sitting in audience, being in a darkness, commenting someone who's been on the stage doing the job. And I think these great scientists, yes, they may be wrong, but they've done very difficult job. And not only that, they stood on the stage and they are standing there even if people criticize them, even if people try to say maybe they are wrong. And through that, and the last thing that I say, I'm sorry, this is long monologue, but what I love on science more than in art, when you have a peer review and people give you some sort of comments, this is an opportunity for evolvement. This is not, oh, I'm getting angry at you because you gave me comments. So this is so beautiful about science. Science is trying to improve, doesn't claim it as absolute truth. And this is what I love about it.
So, to invoke Varela, we can see art as dynamic and in dialogue with the creators. There's always an evolution. Any static point, at least for the art that you like, is death, and science maybe epitomizes that more. There's never a theory or a body of theories, as long as they're living, are always being contended against,
Yeah.
pushed against. And so, what we try to do in this paper is we try to bring that in dialogue with ideas about health and movement. So someone might hear all this and say, okay, this is all philosophical, whatever, I don't really
Yes.
care. But what we would say is that if you want to care about health, if you want to understand what it is that we're trying to do when you go and exercise or you go and see a doctor, then these are real questions that we want to consider. Because until basically today, everyone just understands health as, oh, you don't have this bad thing. You don't have a
Yeah.
blood clot or some disease. Or sometimes it's, oh, when we compare you to this average population, you're pretty close, so we'll just call
Yeah.
you healthy. So what we bring here in is this is also, you can maybe speak to the inspiration Fighting Monkey, is that we want to think about health more as agency, right? As not just what you have or don't have, but what you can do. And you remember the nested agents, it's not just a unified thing. There's your breathing, your cardiovascular system, your vestibular system, all these different parts and what they can do. And that's how we want to understand
Well,
health.
health is not absence of illness many times. Health may be described as your capacity to be connected to people that can, even maybe in certain stage of your life, will just help you to pass away. That's also being healthy, right? It's very important. I think we are too obsessed by staying, I don't know, yeah, we are obsessed by staying healthy, almost like trying to do everything right. And I think we force our bodies and we stress our bodies enormously. We constantly follow some sort of protocols. We constantly hearing what we should be exercise, what we should be doing, but we really forget about listening to ourselves. We rarely find our authentic voice. We only follow ideas of others, but we do not sense what actually is happening in our physiology. And so
So that's a really
yeah,
interesting point, Joseph, because that raises for me the question, is health the ultimate thing that you want? Is there something else that you care about? Like you're mentioning connection here, and I actually see that as maybe you have the choice of going and expanding your physiological capacity, or you can go and connect with your grandma and eat potato chips on
yeah.
your right. And so you might not choose health in that dynamic.
I think there is a yeah, yeah, I value much more connectivity than some kind of abstract health. And I also believe that the relations we create more healthy or more unhealthy environment. I can be going as much as I want to gym, but if I do not manage to clean up my relationship to my children, to my parents, to my grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
if I do not prepare my food with love, if I do not spend some really beautiful, joyful time with my children, I don't think any good meal, a healthy meal, or any bio meat, or any, I don't know, exercise will deliver the health. So I think we forget about the fact that, for example, my father understand and he told me, Joseph, the most beautiful part of my life is that I found simplicity. I know when to go to sleep and I know when to wake up and I know when to cook and I know when to eat and I care about the animals in the forest and I enjoy watching them. And when it will be time to pass away, I'll just pass. And oh, I don't want to now romanticize my mother and my father, but yes, they are very interesting figures because they do not try to always do things in a most effective way because you do one thing more effective, then you can do more things, and then you do more things, and eventually you do many things very effectively, but you do just too many and you're constantly occupied. But I think they found a really beautiful, beautiful joy in a simple life. It's not like they
Mm-hmm.
are simple. They are very beautiful creatures. They are philosophers of life, but they can live very simply in simple clothes, with
Mm-hmm.
simple faces, enjoying the hand of their child when I hold them and when I hug them. They clean their clothes, they clean their dishes, they go to their garden and they embrace their mortality. And when I talked to my father last time, he says, I said, where's mother? She was just here. And he said she went to a graveyard. And I said to him, what she's doing in a graveyard? And he says, she's doing rehearsals, how she will be falling into her hole. So we like to say these jokes about dying because they understand this
Mm-hmm.
is an inevitable part of our lives. And so I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if healthy lifestyle is more important than these healthy relations to greater environment. You know very well the story of
Mm-hmm.
bees that I always say in the mentorship and everything. My father, when he heard that the bees are in trouble, he stood up and started to create the beehives, and he takes care of these bees now for over 20 years. And that's remarkable because when something is needed to be done, he stand up and he does it. He doesn't talk about it. And he's not in social media and he's not posting how great man he is. No one sees him. No one praise him. No one gives him an applause. He does it because it is needed to be done. And that's for me a great inspiration.
So, what I hear from this is beautiful too, because it points to the own limitations of what we've talked about here in the health as agency. It reminds me of the Tao that can be named as the
Mm,
Tao, and here we're the dialogue is with this disease disorder comparing to a normal population definition of health. And so here we're trying to just expand it a little bit and say, okay, what if we say it's about agency across spaces?
beautiful.
And then and there is all this stuff that's beautiful and important about caring of nature and family relationships. And we might say that is involved with health. But for now, we just want to talk about the spaces that we operate in that we can. And then from that perspective, you can, that's where the movement practice comes in, right? Because that's all about expanding
Sure,
the
because
problem solving ability in
we
spaces.
need movement to maintain our boundaries. We need
Mhm.
movement to respond. We need movement to digest. We need movement to metabolize. We need movement to excrete. We need movement to grow, to innovate. And we need some sort of movement to reproduce. And so, yes, movement is playing an important role, but they're not the most important. But the movement is what? Movement is I learn to move to sense myself, or I move in order to find the information that is missing. And what I was interested in the last 20 years of my life, can I move in a way that I find the information that is missing, that is maybe already missing, but I do not sense yet because I let my body schema, my sensory motor format on the background. How I can bring it forward and enjoy investigating what's happening physiologically in my body. You know that we talk about the zero forms, which is zero is representation of zero entropy. So it's like you look for immortality and you have a little smile on your face, but you actually ask yourself a very simple question. What's the cost of living? So when you go to sleep, are you tired? Or have you been inspired during the day and you go to sleep before you're completely dead? And when you wake up, are you tired? Or are you revitalized through the dreams that you learn throughout your night? And so you can ask yourself through different, more or less sophisticated movement forms that you can co-create, that you did not just learn from some sort of master. You can create some sort of precision tools where you can not only notice that something is happening, but you can also create a solution spaces within which you are able to resolve the troubles that are appearing in your body. And then by having that information, you can also create a simulation space where you can maybe test your new strategies to communicate with the world, because we know that it's not enough to only repair. When you go to physio, you repair. You repair because you do stretching, and you repair because you went to a physio because you had a pain. Okay, you got repaired, but then can you move in the world in such a way that you do not come up with the same troubles a week later back again to your doctor?
Mm.
It's not like you should not be going to a doctor, but you should be also working on the way you are activating yourself in the world, the way you're exposing yourself to any information, not just being passive, a human being that, okay, I live as I live. It works how it works. And then when I get in trouble, I just go to someone who just brings me back to my homeostasis.
And we basically talk about this with the whole idea of this axis of
Yes.
agency in our paper, where at one end it's just you're having stuff done to you, like the masseuse is massaging you, and then on the other, and then you can build up like there's static postures, and then fixed forms, and then more complex movements where you can
And then
improvise.
invite into those
I
complex
wonder.
situations other creatures, and through them realize how you communicate,
Mhm.
or even potentially create a theater in which you can simulate completely new futures because you expose yourself to a new idea and you try that new idea.
Can you? So I'd like to hear how these ideas inform how you approach healing and the yeah, feel free to tell the story about the and uh, how you had to record
Yes.
yourself.
Okay. It's just one of the examples, but yeah, we can start by the knee. So
Or
I,
maybe you can just use this as a prompt for
oh,
healing.
okay, I said maybe a different story. So
Mhm.
someone comes to you, they are completely ruined. They hardly walk. They don't have a range of motions. Their breathing is very, very shallow. They have headache on a regular basis. What do? You try to heal them. But that is maybe a trouble because you try to take them too early on a journey. So I was saying, and you know the story, then I say, okay, can you dance more efficiently with the current limitations that you have? So you don't have range of motion, you feel pain, but there is for sure some kind of small solution space. Can you find a better agency in that small solution space? Okay, it's really expensive for you to be alive because you feel pain everywhere. You've done something wrong in past, maybe on a regular basis, but then there is still some kind of space left. Can you move in that space with more joy? And then, if yes, only afterwards, when you feel more joy, your body will ask for more expansion, will ask for more exploration because it is ready to take the journey to the mountain, to the peak of the mountain, to this peak of the mountain is a representation of your homeostasis, right? So because it's this kind of dense region and it is a certain low entropy state, so it's a particular state. But don't go there too.
So you're saying joy and pleasure is the guide to
Yeah, sure.
healing.
Look, my knees might be inflamed, but I shouldn't be forcing them immediately to be healthy. Maybe I explore that space that they are currently in. So where I am currently, of course, thinking of what I've done in past, that so the past to present, noticing how did I get to this state and trying to find the causes of it, it's very important. But then now that I'm in this state, how am I going to explore these limitations and heal my inflamed knees by only doing a cold immersion or by having some shot in my knees or just letting someone to work for me or just having a rest, or I can, while I am still in some sort of trouble, find out how to reactivate my system that would remove that inflammation from my knees. And this is something that interests me a lot because I have seen so many times, and now would come the moment, show me the data. But I've seen that with this approach, people found ways to resolve their troubles mainly by themselves, even people that were given up on by the physios and doctors. One of my students, she got broken pelvis in many places and she was in a chronic pain and they said we can't really help you, and then she was just playing with us. I even didn't want to heal her, and I'm not a healer and I'm not a doctor, and do not want that anyone would believe this is what I would like to claim. But just by playing and letting that emergence, that knowledge to emerge, that playfulness with your own limitations can lead to enormous capacity for healing. It's like you use that capacity of the body to be intelligent, because I believe we are very intelligent creatures solving the troubles. Now, I need to make a note here. If you're in car accident and everything is broken, you're not going to be exploring your space solution. You're going to be taken by the ambulance into the hospital. They have to put you together. I'm talking about you have a lower back pain, like chronic lower back pain. You have headaches. Your stomach is getting worse. Your posture is getting worse. Your relationships are more and more broken. I'm talking about those things. I do not talk about the fact that you fall off the roof or that, I don't know, someone stab you or something like that.
I'm curious about, there's so many people, so much thought into learning and these healing modalities that you mentioned, body mind centering, Feldenkrais, Alexander technique, things like that. Do you see a dialogue to be had either now or in the future between the work with Fighting Monkey and these other practices?
Of course. And I believe that we have practitioners from those fields coming to our workshops. So yes, absolutely. Maybe when I was younger, I would say, maybe when I was younger, I would be maybe more arrogant, or I don't know, maybe I wouldn't be. Maybe I'm just downgrading myself. But I feel strongly that anything is a good tool. It is how you use it. You cannot say yoga is bad. You cannot say qigong is bad. You cannot say tracking field is bad. You cannot say weightlifting is bad. Everything is good. It really depends on the context. But do you understand when to use and what? I am so much more inspired not to develop one answer, but really, can you understand the principles? Can you know how to search for information that is missing? Can you find it? Can you incorporate it creatively back into your system? Meaning that when you have a regular lower back pain, are you always gonna do the same asanas? Are you gonna do always the same qigong? Are you always gonna go to the same physio? Or are you actually capable yourself to start to understand how to position yourself better in the world? Position is related to a story of my father. When I was shuffling the sand, we were working very hard when I was a young boy. We were building up our house and we were in the mountains and garden and everything. And I felt pain in my lower back when I was shuffling the sand. And I said to him, Father, I'm tired. I have pain in my lower back. I don't want to be doing these things. And he says, it is how you position your feet towards the work. That's why you feel pain in your lower back. And then he showed me how he organizes himself in the world and in that situation. And yes, it became very easy. It just made me stronger. It didn't destroy me, if that makes sense. And so I am very much interested in, okay, you do yoga. Are you able to alter the asanas in such a way that they would be helpful to you when you are experiencing certain physiological stress or a certain structural damage? And if that particular system does not have an answer to your problem, are you able to find the answer in some other spaces? Meaning, sometimes we need to shake our body. Sometimes we need to be static. Sometimes we need to be moving. Sometimes we need to be moving in a more organized way. Sometimes we need to be moving in a more chaotic way. Sometimes we need to improvise in order to find the forms. Sometimes we need to stabilize those forms for some times, and then we need to let them go. And I think we are not doing that. We're just creating constant loyalties that are hurting us eventually. I became loyal to jiu-jitsu. I became loyal to boxing. I became loyal to judo. I became loyal to yoga. I became loyal to this philosophical idea. But really,
Fighting
or
monkey.
no, hopefully fighting monkey is just the name for exploration and play, because I won't give you any answer. We will be exploring together, but how that exploration will manifest itself will really depend on you. But I will not have any particular curriculum that you will have to learn. For example, when we are talking about art and creativity and innovation in our system, I am trying to inform the students about how evolution was solving the problems. What are the evolutionary innovations? And then we are looking on parallels between evolutionary innovations and innovations of an artist, and what is the overlap there. I wouldn't like this to be my idea or my kind of cultural idea. This is what I stand for. It needs to be well informed.
Do you have a vision of how more people can understand and have agency in their lives over their health?
Yes, I do. I have to find a right way to communicate those ideas. And they are not completely unstructured. When you look at how evolution was solving it, there is a certain, it's not chaotic. There are certain rules and certain principles, and they can be learned. Like you have certain, maybe some basic principles of how to create an art, or what does it mean to be creative. So I don't think it's that difficult to share that with an audience. I think there is another problem, Max. I don't think this is a issue at all. I think the trouble is that we are so tired that we are not willing to engage in creativity. That's the real trouble. I want to know what to do, and I want to have the results now. That's what's the trouble. We act already when we are in crisis. I was talking to one Olympic doctor, someone who follows our Olympic team, and she said something interesting. That if your body is working fairly well, you don't care about sensing yourself. You simply do not care because the recovery is so great. And you start to question when things they start to go seriously wrong. I think the biggest issue is our energy and our time. We feel that we are living in crisis, and so we are hammering our bodies and our minds. Yeah, I think we are looking for an easy solutions. We cannot, or I think whenever I introduce to people that step through the door and met me, when I introduced the creativity and the way we could attend to the world in a more creative way, everyone was open. Really, I think almost everyone is willing to be more playful in their life. But we are fed with informations or these kind of shortcuts, and we tend to believe them. And so we can be cheated many times. This is the biohack, this is the protocol, this is that. But people are actually superbly smart. If you expose them to maybe more complex creativity, they are willing to learn and they really enjoy even the long-term process. I only want to say thank you for your beautiful questions and your curiosity. Listeners, they do not know, but we know each other now for some time. And having thought-provoking questions is very stimulating and inspiring. And so, for the end of this beautiful dialogue with you, I want to thank you for your curiosity and for your attendance to live with a fresh eye, which I really appreciate because it's rare.
If you're interested in finding resources if you want to learn how to debug your pain, come and visit our resources at essays.debugyourpain.com. Thanks for listening.